Today we're talking about recording bass, and I'm going to show you the very easy and simple way that I record bass for pretty much all of my songs. Whether I'm doing rock or country or pop punk, this is how I do it. And once we've talked about the gear and the setup and all that kind of stuff, we'll talk about a few tips, tricks, and things to keep in mind to make sure that we're getting high-level professional recordings, and also just kind of make the recording session go a little bit easier and smoother, whether you're recording yourself or recording somebody else. All right, let's get into it. Alright, so first things first, obviously we're going to need a bass because that's what we're recording today. I do know there's like Easy Bass and other bass instrument software applications out there, and those are great and fun. I've tried a lot of them, but at the end of the day, I do prefer to play an actual bass on my songs. I just like the process and think it's fun, right? That's the main reason. As far as which bass to use, it doesn't matter. Whatever you have, whatever you like is just fine. I've had a few different basses over the years, and personally, I've just kind of landed on the Fender Precision bass. It's really simple. It's about as simple as it gets, but it sounds good and just works for everything that I do. I do a lot of rock, a lot of country, a lot of pop punk, and this just kind of handles all of those really easily. All right, so the next thing I do is I grab myself a decent guitar cable. This is a Monster guitar cable. I've had these things for like 10 years, had zero issues, so highly recommend them. And plug that into the output of my bass guitar here, and I go to the input of the tuner pedal on my guitar pedal board. Now, I don't use any other pedals on my pedal board for recording bass, but I do use this tuner. In fact, I use this tuner to tune for my bass, for my electric guitars, and my acoustic guitars whenever I'm recording. Just kind of use the same thing, makes things easy, makes things simple. I really like this pedal tuner. It's quick, it's easy, it's accurate, so no reason to use anything else. Next, I come out the other side of my pedal board, again, not using any other pedals other than the tuner. I take that guitar cable and I plug it into the 1/4 inch input on my audio interface, and I make sure that that input is set to instrument level because, well, we're recording an instrument. So as far as actual physical gear and all that kind of stuff, that's pretty much it. Now, if you're using like a clip-on tuner headstock instead of a pedal tuner, it's even simpler, right? You just take that guitar cable, you go straight out of your guitar, straight in your audio interface, and you're good to go. So super simple there. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to make sure that we have a decent level for recording. We definitely don't want to clip. When we clip, that's when you get that red light. That's kind of basically chopping off your signal, and it can sound distorted and all that kind of stuff. We definitely don't want that. But we do want a nice strong signal. So my audio interface, it has like these little LED lights there, and if I play, kind of usually play like the loudest part of the song, then I want to make sure that I'm hitting around -12, -6 for my peaks. That gives me a nice strong signal, but also leaves enough above there that I don't have to worry about clipping and getting that red light. If your interface doesn't have those little LEDs, maybe you just have like a single light that flashes green or red, what I do on those is I'll play and I'll keep turning it up till I start to see some red flickering in there, and then I'll just turn it back down just a hair and make sure that I stay in the green. That way I'm getting the strongest signal I can without clipping. So a little different approach with those kinds of interfaces, but the idea is the same. Nice strong signal, but we definitely want to avoid clipping. Another place you can check your levels is inside your recording software, and depending on your software, it's going to be a little bit different, but there's definitely some similarities going on. So I'm in Studio One, and I've got my tracks nice and tall here so we can kind of see what's going on. One nice thing about Studio One is if I come over here, these are actually my inputs right here. This is what it's seeing coming in. You can see I'm on channel 1 where I'm recording my bass, and if I play, I want to be hitting right around here, -12, -6, somewhere in this ballpark. And you can see I'm right there. Of course, if my levels are too low, use the input knob on my interface to bring it up. If it's too high, use my input knob to bring it back down. Now, not all recording softwares have the input levels like this. And so in that case, you would do something like this, where here's my track inside my mixer, and I have this again nice and tall. Right here is my -12, right here is my -6, and I make sure to have my plugins turned off, because if I have any plugins turned on, that will actually affect the levels that's being shown here. So all plugins are turned off, and if I play here, you can see again, I'm right between -12 and -6. And of course, if your software doesn't even show those values right there, then as long as you're in the green and maybe occasionally touching yellow just barely, you'll be good. All right, so now it's time to jump into my recording software. So let's take a look at what we got going on there. So you can see I have my recording software here. I use Studio One, and I've created this bass track right here. All I did is just here, add track. It's just an audio track. It's mono, no need for stereo here. And so created that right there. And that's about as simple as it gets, right? The one thing I do like to do is add a bass amp sim. In particular, I use this Ampeg SVT-VR Classic by Brainworks. I got this several years ago from Plugin Alliance, and I've used this ever since. I love this bass amp plugin. So I'll show you exactly why I use this. So if we have my bass track, we have this monitoring button turned on here. If I play now, we're just going to hear exactly what's coming off the pickups directly. It's the DI sound. And when I turn it on, it'll put the plugin on top of that DI sound and make it sound like it's coming from a bass amp. It's going to give it like size, it's going to give it attitude, it's going to have a growl and presence and a little bit of compression that just really makes it sit nice in a mix and just makes it sound really good. So let's hear without and then with. I think it sounds way better, sounds fuller, bigger. You do get more string noise, finger noise, and all that kind of stuff. Something to watch out and be careful of when playing. But yeah, it just sounds way better. And since we're kind of on the subject of amp sims, one thing I wanted to show you is a setting you're definitely going to want to check to make sure that when you're playing and listening back through your recording software and through your plugin, you're not getting that weird delay thing. It's going to make it feel much more natural to play. So if I come up here to Studio One and hit Preferences and my audio setup right here, this setting right here, device block size. Your software may call it buffer size or something similar to that, but it's going to be in samples. And the idea is that we want to get this as low as possible. So right now I'm at 64 samples. That works really well for me. I kind of hang out around there. I don't like to go any higher than 128 typically, but how low you can get your number is going to depend on your system, like how fast it is, how many other plugins are going on, and just what other resources it's taking. So you want to get that as low as possible. Now, I go into this even deeper in a video I'll link in the description down below, and it's all about amp sims, playing with amp sims, recording with amp sims, and all that kind of stuff. Go all the way from the very beginning all the way to more advanced kind of stuff. Just really covers the whole thing. So if you're wanting to get into bass amp sims or even guitar amp sims, but you still have some questions, check out that link to the video in the description down below. All right, so now let's take a listen to what this bass tone sounds like in the context of our song we've been working with. This is the third video in a series of how I like to record my songs. If you've missed the other ones, check out the link in the description down below. That'll take you to the playlist with all of the songs for this whole entire series, so you can check those out. But we have our drums right here. In my last video, we talked about recording live drums. So these are the live drums from a real drummer with a real acoustic drum kit. They're not processed or anything right now. No mixing going on there. And these right here, again, are our scratch tracks, where the guitars and stuff you're hearing, those are all going to be replaced. But for now, we're recording our bass. So let's hear what that sounds like in the context of the song. Okay, so there we go. There's my whole workflow for recording bass. Bass into tuner, tuner into my interface, interface into my recording software. Throw that amp sim on there and I'm good to go. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But that's kind of just the beginning. Once we start recording bass, there's some things we need to keep in mind to make sure we're getting professional sounding tracks. Because there's some things that can happen along the recording process that can kind of ruin things or make things sound kind of amateur. So A couple things we want to keep in mind. One, we've already talked about, is not clipping. Make sure we have good recording levels, but we do not want to see that red light and clip, right? So we healthy signals, but do not clip. Another thing is check your tuning on a regular basis. This bass is really stable in tuning. However, every 2 or 3 takes, I'm definitely checking my tuning. Certain things can affect the tuning of the bass or the guitar, actually, even if you got the room at a certain temperature, but the air conditioner kicks on or the heat kicks on and changes the temperature, that's going to affect your bass and the tuning of the bass. Also, if you've been playing for a while, your strings got all warmed up, you tuned your strings while they're warmed up, and then you stop playing for a couple minutes, they're going to cool off and actually go a little bit sharp on you, especially if you go get coffee and come back 10 minutes later and the air conditioner's been blowing. Yeah, they're going to be out of tune. You can check it on your tuner and say, oh, I'm out of tune. What you want to do then is play again for a few minutes and get the strings warmed back up, and then you want to check your tuning again. So check your tuning on a regular basis, because out of tune guitars and bass just don't sound very good. Another thing is new strings. So this is kind of a controversial one. Bass players don't change their strings very often typically, because bass strings last a lot longer than guitar strings do. They're just bigger. They don't get all gunked up or whatever, or affected as much as guitar strings. And also, my hands aren't very oily, so my bass strings last actually a really long time. So I don't change my strings that often, but if I'm recording something important like this 5-song EP I'm doing, putting a lot of time, a lot of effort and some money into it, I will change bass strings at the beginning of the project. And then if I go a week or 2 with recording these songs, that's fine, not a big deal. I won't change strings again, because again, bass strings last a long time. Plus, bass strings are kind of expensive. If you've never bought bass strings before, you can easily spend $20, $30, $40, sometimes $50 depending on the set you're getting. So yeah, it adds up real fast. Another thing to keep an eye out for, or an ear out for, is kind of just bad technique on bass. And this happens to me sometimes if I'm not paying attention while I'm playing, but it definitely happens like if I'm recording one of the local bands or something like that. This happens quite a bit. One is this fret slap thing some guys do. It's like a... I don't know if it's like live and the energy's going and they just do that, and I don't know, it's a feel thing or whatever. But in a recording, that definitely gets old really quick. Once you start compressing and adding all the, the effects and getting in the mix, it's going to stick out and you can't get rid of that. I guess you go in and cut every single one of them out maybe, but that'd be super annoying. So yeah, just watch out for that slap thing going on like that. Also, string noise is kind of a big one. So a lot of times you'll hear, especially when you're doing something like this. Right? And that's just basically not lifting the finger off the string, and you're getting a lot of that kind of stuff. The obvious solution that I do all the time, instead of come up here, is you want to minimize movement, right? Now, you will get a little slide noise every now and then. That's part of the nature of the instrument and what makes it sound like a real bass and all that kind of stuff. But you definitely want to minimize it as much as possible. No big thing like that. So that's something I've run into quite a bit as well, and that will kill your bass tracks. Also, another thing to keep in mind is I'm not really a bass player, let alone a professional session bass player, so my timing is not always perfect. So another thing I will do is I'll actually go in and edit my bass playing. I will line up my bass with that kick and that snare. When those things are locked in, it just makes the foundation of that song sound so much better. Now, of course, if I just completely fudge the whole part and my timing is way off, I'll punch in and fix it and do it right. But any small little minor edits or timing things, those are going to help make your song sound more professional. It is done all the time in professional recordings, so it is perfectly okay. All right, so there we go. Like I said, this is the 3rd video in a series of how I like to record songs. The next one is going to be about recording acoustic guitar. So how I'm going to record acoustic guitar for this song in particular. So make sure you check that out. If you found this helpful, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.